Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. I'm thrilled to be joined by David Tate, a licensed clinical psychologist and an assistant clinical professor at the Yale School of Medicine, as well as a lecturer in the Yale School of Management. He has written a fantastic book called Conscious Accountability, Deepen Connections and Elevate Results. Came out just a few months ago, and I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome David to the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Absolutely. So in its traditional sense, accountability is something I know you talk a lot about, and it's thought of in terms of having to answer to or justify your actions someone in power. The traditional notion of accountability 1.0 has serious flaws, as you talk about in your book. David, I'd love to get started with just the fundamental of this, of what got you started in this. Why did you become so passionate about this concept of conscious accountability and led you on this journey?
Yeah, so a number of years ago, I was asked to put some material together on accountability, develop kind of a workshop. And as I did the research, I was really underwhelmed by what I found in terms of the models of accountability. They seem to lack a more sophisticated, nuanced take on kind of humanity and this, like, how people actually function psychologically. So I was hoping to create something that is a little bit more psychologically sophisticated, that really takes into account how can we be accountable, but how can we also do that in a way that isn't sterile and that actually uplifts people through that process. So that was what kind of got me going on the journey. Eventually, that turned into the opportunity to write the book, and I like company, and I'm more accountable when I have people around me, kind of very much in the spirit of conscious accountability. So I invited my co-authors to join me, Marianne Pantalon and Darren David, also psychologists and coaches. We went on this journey of creating and helping to kind of articulate how the idea of conscious accountability is different from kind of traditional notions of accountability.
Wild. Well, that's great. Appreciate your passion about this. So what are some key ways that conscious accountability differs from that traditional notion of accountability?
Yeah. So when we think about kind of traditional accountability, or what we call accountability 1.0, it's often focused on just the results. Like, did you do the thing you were supposed to do? Did we hit our numbers, whatever that was, or not? So it's focused on results. Conscious accountability also focuses on results, but it also focuses on relationships. So how did our relationships improve or not improve as a result of our working together towards results? So that's one key difference. The second is that oftentimes accountability we think of that as an individual kind of thing, like it's really up to the individual to be accountable or not. And individual accountability is certainly important, but in conscious accountability, we think of accountability as something that's always shared, that everyone holds pieces of what it takes to kind of make good on our larger goals and aspirations. And so accountability is always like a two-way street, and it's shared. And finally, accountability 1.0, oftentimes, we hear people say when something goes wrong, who needs to be held accountable? Who should be held accountable? And so it's kind of a reactive or almost blame-oriented approach to accountability. Whereas in conscious accountability, the question is, who's responsible for making things better? And what do we learn from our mistakes? So how can we get better as a result of having made an error or a failure? How can we improve? So the goal of conscious accountability is really about learning, and we think of it as more proactive. So those are some of the key
that's a perfect segue. That's a perfect segue over here. You just mentioned that conscious accountability begins with improving yourself. I would add probably social awareness. But where do you start with that? When, especially for our small business owners, that are very focused on accountability right now in this new year, where does that start, and how and what are some of the things, some of those cues that we need to be on the lookout for when it comes to sort of starting with that, again, that self and social awareness and improvement, and how does it lead into conscious accountability that can impact real change throughout the year?
Yeah, great question. So when we think about consciousness, You're sort of, alluding to this. There's a couple of ways that I think, people and small business leaders can think about that. First is exactly what you said, being more aware of yourself, what it is that you want, what it is that you need, what your goals are, what your motives are for things, what you want to see happen. So that's on the self level, being able to kind of notice your own thoughts and feelings. The second is, again, social awareness, being aware of the other people, the other players with whom we interact, and not just in a transactional way, but what is it? Why are they there? What do they want and need from you as a leader? And being aware of that. And then thirdly is kind of what I call systems awareness, really awareness of the interdependencies between ourselves and others, or even different parts of the system in which we work, and being aware of those kind of invisible threads that connect everything, and being aware of how our actions or inactions have impact on all of those other players. So when we become more aware of that, we can be much more accountable. We can be create that different kind of accountability armed with that awareness.
Well, speaking of accountability, I've got to be accountable because we are going to have a commercial fire up in just a few moments. So I'd love to continue the conversation, David. We're going to squeeze in a quick break over here, and we're going to continue talking about conscious accountability, deepen connections, and elevate results when we return on the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. You're listening to Get Down to Business, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. I'm continuing my conversation with David Tate, who, together with his co-authors, have written Conscious Accountability, Deepen Connections, and Elevate Results. We've been chatting about what conscious accountability is, how it differs from traditional notions of accountability, and how it begins with improving oneself and having that social awareness. So, David, fascinating conversation so far, and we're all about giving small business owners, entrepreneurs, and frankly anybody tuning into this program some homework assignments, which is especially relevant in the new year. So what's the one thing that leaders can do to begin to implement the practices of conscious accountability?
So we have a whole framework to help leaders get better at accountability. We call it the Connect framework, and it's 7 practices to help drive better accountability that gets results, but also improves relationships in the process. The first practice is about creating clarity, which is all about creating clear goals and shared expectations. So, and that's really, really important. You can't have accountability unless everyone is clear on where we're going and what everyone's responsibility and what their part is in that. So in terms of the homework, I think, this is a great time of year to really get clear on what it is that you want to achieve in whatever time frame we're looking at. If it's the whole year, great. If it's just the first quarter, great. And then really thinking about how you're going to communicate that to the other people around you, and make sure that everybody's on the same page. And that because no one sets out to be confusing or unclear, and yet so many times we, even if we think we're being clear, the message that someone else gets is not exactly what we intended. So this is a real opportunity to slow down and make that happen.
No question about it. And I know on your website, which we'll send our listeners to in just a moment, you've got a lot of great information, including rethinking accountability. It's high time. I know it's a great article. And you've got a lot of great information. So the book is really more than a book. It's a guide. It's for really all kinds of listeners, but frankly, everybody that wants to improve. And it's a great read, and it's a great gift for everybody. And on that note, I want to make sure we can all get in touch with you and pick up a copy of this bestseller. David Tate, how can we do that?
Please just go to online www.consciousgrowthpartners.com.
consciousgrowthpartners.com. And again, the book is called Conscious Accountability, deepen connections, elevate results. Frankly, again, a great read for everybody. You will learn all about this this really, really great concept, conscious accountability, and how we can courageously and effectively offer and receive feedback. But again, my big takeaway from this conversation of accountability begins with improving one's self and social awareness. David, I've learned a lot in our conversation. Hope you will come back real soon here on the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship.
Thanks, Shalom. Pleasure to be with you today. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And you can make sure that you don't miss a single episode by subscribing, rate, reviewing, and sharing on your favorite podcast app. You can do that wherever podcasts are found, or of course on my website, shalomklein.com. On today's program, we talked with some really, really fascinating people. We've talked about all sorts of different industries. We've talked all about different growth strategies in the new year. And you could always check out our amazing sponsors that keep the show on there. Tom Mirabali, independent agent for Blue Cross Blue Shield, for all of your health insurance and affordable care needs. His phone number is 630-863-3477, 630-863-3477, or his website, healthplanchicago.com. But again, we'll be back next Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on AM 560, The Answer, with another jam-packed show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Check my website, shalomklein.com. But to success, let's get down to business, and let's make sure that you put into practice all of those small business accounting New Year's resolutions that we talked about earlier on the program. If you have any questions, please definitely reach out to me through my website. Have a great week ahead, and I'll talk to you right here on AM 560, The Answer, next week.